Hello, welcome to the program Spiritism Inspiring Lives. Today's reflections are based on the theme Provocations. Surely in these short moments of reflections, we don't have the intention to bring conclusions, but we do have the intention to bring some reflections that may help us in our own inner reflecting process. And do we know who we are? Which level of awareness do we have about ourselves? From which dimension, from which perspective? Do we think that we are provoked by others in our daily experiences? Or maybe be aware that perhaps we provoked others? Bear in mind that from this perspective that we are looking today, we are all learners of ourselves, valuable human beings in essence, yet imperfect, perfecting ourselves. In this journey of liberation from within, therefore, provocations. Provocation is the act of doing or saying something on purpose in order to make someone unhappy, angry, or even to provoke them. Those words can help us also to analyze ourselves, because all the main point here is to increase our ability to analyze ourselves from a loving perspective, that we can look and accept our own shortcomings within the purpose to heal them. It's very important that we start from this perspective. And also to help us in our reflections today, we bring some reflections from the Spirit, Irmão José. And he starts by saying, and I quote, "Do not accept provocations." Gosh, this is challenging. But it is possible. It is challenging sometimes, but it is possible for all of us. The main reason, the main point here is to understand what do we need to develop within ourselves so that we can disarm ourselves, become less reactive, less defensive, be aware of our own shortcomings, take control of them, and above all, also be aware of the inner tools that we can learn to stimulate within ourselves, such as humbleness, forgiveness. Also empowering ourselves in taking responsibility for what we think and feel. Those are resources that we bring within ourselves, abilities that, yes, still need to be nourished and developed. But we are here exactly for that. Here, I mean on earth, to learn to expand our self-awareness. And also to improve the healthy aspects, faculties within ourselves. So bear in mind in our daily basis, which is still we are in a very challenging reality, being learning or studies in the planet Earth, which is a planet of trials and expiations. So be attentive, conscious, not to accept provocations that may come in our direction that we attract in order to say no to our inner defensiveness and say yes to our inability to flexibilize ourselves. And we carry on, and I quote, "Take the initiative to end any discussion." Discussion here does not mean dialogue, which is healthy and needed in any relationship. Irmão José refers here, take the initiative. Be stronger than your ego. Be stronger than your shortcomings. To end any discussion when it is based on provocations, so that we don't reinforce our egoistic tendencies, that we choose freely to disarm ourselves, understanding that within ourselves we bring innate, great seeds of love. As long as we choose to learn to expand tolerance, patience, silence. And I go back again, responsibility, which means the autonomy that we choose to think in different ways. There is the need to actualize our thoughts or belief systems. Because in reality, every human being, what we think and feel, that is down to us. It has nothing to do with the external world. The external world, people or situations, they are neutral. Our perception of them is where we are within our own relationship, even if that is on an unconscious level. But the purpose of life is to evolve, is to become more aware. And I carry on with Irmão José, and I quote, what fraternal dialogue does not resolve, discussion complicates. Fraternal dialogue, which we will be always insisting in maintaining in our relationships. But when we reach provocations, which usually reflects aggressiveness, anger, sometimes hatred within ourselves, from this toxic environment, psychically speaking, there cannot be coming or emerging healthy resolutions. So what fraternal dialogue does not resolve, discussion complicates. Always bear in mind, we are immortal beings. What we think, feel, and do and say, we are seeding in the garden of our spiritual journey. And we will be sooner or later obliged to deal with the consequences. Surely we are here to expand the goodness within. Also learning again here, look within our immediacy sometimes, that we want to have resolutions immediately, that we want people to agree with us. This urge within ourselves, which is a lack of self-control, requires attention so that we learn to become more patient within ourselves, more flexible, more adaptable, so that we can sustain ourselves within a reality sometimes that may not be possible to make decisions or resolve immediately, but later on it will. So patience with us and also with others. And as we move forward, I quote a reflection of Irmão José. Don't carry on with the argument. Silence and time are the great areas of truth. So instead of carrying on and on and on and discussing within our own minds, the thoughts, the obsessed thoughts, the obsessed ideas, fixed ideas, day and night, carry on and on, let's choose to stop and breathe, bring the focus back to us, so that we don't carry on with the internal toxicity projecting outside and onto others. It's fundamental in our evolution path to learn to deal with our own difficulties that we carry within, our own shortcomings. Silence means giving ourselves time to think twice, and also time to re-educate ourselves. And time, understanding that sometimes if we gave the best of ourselves and yet the other part in the relationship may not be there where we are and carry on provoking, time, which is the time of God in the universe, will always offer us new possibilities for renewal, for awakening, for adjusting, for learning. It is important to study and self-study in relation to the truth, which is the universal code of healing, evolution, promotion, growing from within. Because as more as we understand the greatest truth that come from God, we are potentializing ourselves with more inner patience, inner tolerance, flexibility, and freely choose no longer to provoke others, because we are overriding our own shortcomings based on pride and selfishness. Do not try to impose yourself on anyone. It's important also in our daily self-analysis process to observe if we have these tendencies to impose ourselves onto others, because that is distinction or the lack of self-control. That we choose to be rude with others. We want to say things to hurt others. that comes from a hurted place within our individuality, within our consciousness, is fundamental to calm down our egoistic, prideful tendencies, which manifest and represent the lack of self-worth, lack of self-love. The greatest one is not the one that screams more, that shouts louder, that hurts more. It's the one that develops the ability to silence more, to forgive more, to be tolerant, to constantly be reflecting within and choosing to renew their own shortcomings, and therefore, in the next moment, in the next day, to be connected with the inner wisdom, the sacred within, where we realize that we are in a more creative state of mind, new choices, new abilities. A lot of energy is consumed in useless conversations. Provocations, conversations. Which kind of conversations do we feel attracted to? At home, with our partners, with our families, in our workplaces, in our communities. Which kind of conversations do we feel nourished by? Because here, Irmão José is telling us a lot of energy is consumed, and it's true, in useless conversations. Useless in a sense when we consider the universal law of evolution, which are or is God's law. Everything that is useless, futile, is not helping us to heal, to promote, to grow. It is helping us to carry on hurting ourselves. And surely we are in this cool earth to promote us further, to grow spiritually, to renew ourselves, to potentialize ourselves towards goodness, towards ourselves and others. And Irmão José carries on, and I quote, "If someone misunderstands you, do not explain yourself more than necessary." We are all invited to flexibilize ourselves and therefore learning to be humble, so that we give the right to other people to be the best that they can be, even if they are provoking us. But bear in mind, no one can provoke us within if we choose to disarm ourselves through self-love. And self-love is the ability to fulfill our duty towards ourselves from the higher self. Forgiving, letting go, choosing to be kind, choosing to be fraternal, choosing consciously to allow other people to be in the best that they can be and us to be better than we are in every moment. That is potentializing the higher self and also the inner freedom. He who slightly opens the door to invigilance ends up wide opening it. Provocations. If we are invigilant, lacking awareness, because we bring centuries and centuries of experiences in terms of tendencies, values, concepts on our conscious system. So when we are invigilant, not aware of ourselves, these automatic patterns, they emerge or can emerge in any moment, dominating us and being projected outside us. So very important that we are vigilant, which means self-aware of our own shortcomings, not in a negative way, in ability to observe, sounds like being in contact with our own relationship. And when these old tendencies may emerge, we may choose now not to validate them anymore. Instead of provoking others, we may remind ourselves, this is no longer suitable for me, for us. Because we keep on hurting ourselves if we choose to behave in that way. We have the ability to promote ourselves, promote our thinking, our reasoning, our feelings. And Irmão José continues, I quote, "Do not enter the ranks of those who try to make you lose your temper. In the old days, centuries back, we all probably learned that is the other who makes me feel angry. Now we are within the methodology on the psychological perspective that Jesus is presented to humanity, where we are invited to reflect within and realizing that my temper belongs to my shortcomings, mine unconsciousness, mine rebelliousness, my futile way of understanding myself and others and experiences. And therefore, I also understand that I'm much more than my shortcomings. I also bring the potentials to sort them out, to heal them. And I will use those resources, which needs to be stimulated within us using our free will. We will develop these abilities in our daily experiences as we are interacting with each other. This is the purpose of existence, the main purpose, let's say it like that. And then Irmão José continues, instead of lowering yourself to the level of the contender, make them rise to yours. Instead of us to compete on an egoistic level, who is the strongest one on inferior level, Irmão José is inviting us, raise to yours. But that requires vigilance. And when he says raise, he does not mean impose. He is meaning be yourself the example of not shouting, of not screaming, of not provoking others, of not engaging in any provocation. Pay that price of that inner effort so that we can condition ourselves in this healthy way of thinking, feeling, and behavior. Sometimes it is challenging, yes, it is. But when we say it's challenging, we do not mean that it's impossible. It is possible, in case we want to. And in that way now, we may reflect about some recommendations in the face of provocation. We started with the reflections of Irmão José. Now we present some recommendations that for those of us who are willing to be attentive of their own tendencies of provocation, or when we are in situations that we may be provoked because we need to be challenged in our shadows, that we can enlighten them. Everything in the universe, from the eyes of the self, from the eyes of the divine within ourselves, is there to promote us further in goodness. One of the first aspects that we need to consider here, don't react in the heat of the moment. Emotions can prevent us from making the best decisions. It's better to take some time to think and reflect calmly, possibly seeking the help of others. Here, we are learning exactly how to deal with our internal provocations, or in case we are provoked by external elements. Don't react. Each time when we react, we are in a defensive mood, lacking self-control. Especially in the heat of our emotions when they emerge violently sometimes. And don't make decisions in those moments, because usually once the heat of the disturbed emotion comes down, we may regret our decisions. And as we carry on here, listen carefully is another resource that presented to us in relation to when we think about provocations, either internal or external. Listen carefully. When receiving criticism, try to extract the truth from what was said and ignore the empty statements. There is always something to learn, even from those who wish us harm. But in order to learn, even from those who try to harm us, it is necessary that we learn the great ability to be humble, to be forgiving, to be vigilant, to be attentive, to be willing to overcome our own shortcomings. Believe me, dear friends, we always can learn in any situation, as long as we learn to control our rebelliousness, or pride, vanity, selfishness, in order to disarm ourselves. In another aspect, respond with humility and fraternity. That is the purpose. That is the major goal which we are aiming. Assertiveness instead of attack demonstrates maturity. Defending oneself by attacking is a sign of a wounded ego and indicates that the response is likely not the best. Do we know that perhaps we are dealing with our wounded ego? Study and self-study from a spiritual perspective will help us to understand more profoundly in a loving way. But it also teaches us how to take the responsibility to stimulate the resources of the higher self, humility, fraternity. When we say assertiveness, the greatest master of assertiveness is Jesus Christ. Instead of attacking, imposing, screaming, and shouting, no, we are here in the school earth to learn to control ourselves, not others. Control what we think, what we feel, is fundamental. We speak less and listen more is another tool that we can develop. The act of silencing cruel thoughts, judgments, and reactions driven by indignation is essential to avoid imbalance and the negative influences of others. The act, the mental act, the emotional act, the verbal act, to silence when external negative elements come from others. As more as we develop inner discernment, inner freedom, through self-love, we also develop the wisdom within, either from our mental dimension, from our emotional dimension, and understand that people are as they are, and we are who we are. All valuable human beings in essence, yet imperfect, perfecting ourselves. It requires a lot of courage not to engage in the inferiority of others. But it is possible for all of us when we choose to look within our own inferiorities and learn to control them, learn to reintegrate them. Developing our creative mind where we have different options, how we choose to think, although it is quite challenging to educate our mental state, but it's possible as long as we choose. Whose prayer? Very important when we reflect about provocations. One of the aspects or methods, whose prayer? Even if the words seem disconnected, praying in moments of provocation can help change the feelings and lead to a more loving and balanced attitude. Because when you choose the silence prayer within, even if we are in this altercation process with somebody else who is screaming at us, we choose praying. No one knows outside. It is a state of mind, a state of connectiveness within and the divine within us. In that way, it's almost like we are soothing our emotional dimension. In that way, we become stronger in tolerance, in patience, and in loving ways that we can center ourselves better. It is always possible to learn new ways and even improve the ones that we have learned. Remember the responsibility. Everyone is free to think and act, but freedom must be used so as not to cause suffering to others. Those who cause pain to others end up imprisoning themselves in their own consequences. Why is that? Because of the law of cause and effect. Have you heard of it? It states that every action has a corresponding reaction or outcome. This principle highlights that nothing happens by chance. Rather, every result can be traced back to a specific cause. Be attentive. When we are in a provoked state of mind, we are on the wrong road, on the wrong way, on the wrong path. Stop, think, and control yourselves. Understanding this law can help us to recognize the connections between our choices and the consequences that follow. By being mindful of our actions, we can influence the outcomes we experience in life, surely. Bear in mind that we are all essentially beings of love, of goodness, yet imperfect and perfecting. This is our journey of self-enlightenment. So as more as we study ourselves, as more as we become conscious, as more as we are vigilant of our own inner shortcomings, shadows, and take the responsibility to re-educate ourselves in a loving way without blaming ourselves, we grow spiritually. We grow in the ability to silence instead of externalizing our own violence. We increase our ability to be more fraternal and not to provoke others, because we do have more understanding about the law of cause and effect. Every bad seed that we plant in the garden of our existences, we will be reaping the consequences. Every good seed that we plant in the garden of our spiritual journey, we will also be reaping it. Good seeds means good thoughts, rational thoughts, based on the truth that comes from the Creator of everything and everyone. It is a constant process available to all of us to stimulate the responsibility, the mental discipline, the emotional discipline, the ability to forgive ourselves and others, the ability to reflect, to be more conscious, because life is a constant movement with possibilities to promote ourselves. So from now onwards, I hope that these few reflections here regarding provocations may at least bring some awareness that we can hold back in case we have the feeling or the tendencies to provoke others through our own shadows. And if the shadows of others reaches us through provocations, that we also may take from these reflections some resources to protect ourselves and to engage with more wisdom, with more love, with more fraternal thoughts, feelings, and actions, and learning to trust in the universal time that always presents to us what we offer to the world and others. Let's be more gentle with ourselves and therefore with others. Let's be less defensive and more forgiving. It is possible as long as we choose to. And in that way, we are coming to the end of our reflections today. And I wish you much peace to all. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.